Hello, my beautiful bookworms, and I am sorry for all the technical difficulties, and I thank you for giving me being patient with me. As I was planning on getting you more videos over my vacation, but I got sick, and we are going to be reading. I'm going to be reading to you Deep Blue, and as you remember in the last chapter, Sarah is talking to Talassa, and Talassa's convincing her to let her in love, and Sarah's like, I will just close off my heart. And Maddie, and she's like, no. And chapter 6 picks up where chapter 5 left off, and here we go. Like I said, it starts on page 49, and here we go. Seraphina was hiding from her mother, ministers, minions, and Maddie. She had stolen away. It drove everyone wild with worry, but she needed a few minutes a day, every day, to be free from the eyes and ears of the court, and she especially needed it today. The match had been decided. The announcement had been made. Seraphina had met her future husband, and she didn't want any part of him. Mahdi had arrived in Miramar a week earlier with his parents, the emperor and empress, his cousins, Nila and Yazid, and their royal entourage to meet his future wife as custom demanded. He was 16, serious, smart, and shy. He didn't ride, he didn't fence. He preferred the company of Desiderio, Seraphina's brother, a merboy, his own age, and Yazid to anyone else's. He barely spoke to Seraphina, who was 2 years younger. He was courteous to her, as he was to everyone, but that was all. He's a Gobi. I'd rather marry Palamon, she told Tavia, referring to her mother's bad-tempered hippocamp. Their first real conversation came about only by accident. Seraphina had been sitting in the garden of the South Court listening to a conch shell when Mahdi and his chaperone, Ambassador Akmal, happened to swim by. They didn't see her. She'd hidden herself on a coral shelf above them, behind a giant sea fan. What do you think of the princess, your grace? She heard the ambassador ask. She is very lovely, no? Seraphina knew she shouldn't be eavesdropping, but she couldn't help herself. Curious, she leaned against the sea fan. Does it matter what I think? He said. She's their choice, my parents, their advisors, not mine. I have no choice. At that very second, the sea fan, old and brittle, cracked under Seraphina's weight. It fell from the coral shelf and toppled heavily to the seafloor, sending up a cloud of silt. When the cloud finally settled, Seraphina peered over the shelf. Maudie looked up and saw her. Wow, this is awkward, she said. You hurt us, he said. I didn't mean to, said Seraphina. I was sitting here listening to a conch, and then you swam by, and, well, I couldn't help it. Look, I'm sorry. I'll go. No, don't go. Please, Maudie said. He turned to his ambassador. Leave us, he ordered. Your Grace, is that wise? There'll be talk. Leave us, Maudie repeated through gritted teeth. The ambassador bowed and left. As soon as he was gone, Maddie swam up to Sarah and helped her over the jagged edges of the broken sea fan. They sat down together on a nearby rock. I'm the one who's sorry, he said. I shouldn't have said that. You didn't need to apologize. I know how you feel. He turned to look at her. But I thought, Seraphina laughed. You thought what? That because I'm a merle, it's just fine with me? Getting betrothed at 16 and married at 20 to someone chosen for me, not by me? How very enlightened of you, your grace. It's the 41st century, not the 10th. And to be perfectly honest, I'd much rather pursue a doctorate in ancient Atlantean history than marry you. After that, she often felt Maudie's eyes on her. They were beautiful eyes, dark, expressive, and fringed with long black lashes. She would look up at a dinner or during a pageant and catch him watching her. He would always look away. The next time they were alone together, it was because Seraphina had found him hiding. She had another history conch to listen to and had managed to sneak away from her court to do it. The only problem was that someone had beaten her to her new hiding place. Maudie was sitting there in a copse of kelp with a knife in one hand and a small ivory colored object in the other. When he heard her approach, he tried to hide them. "Can't you give me one moment's peace?" he asked wearily. Seraphina backed up. "I'm sorry. I didn't mean to disturb you," she said. Maddie's head snapped up at the sound of her voice. Oh no," he said. "I'm sorry, Seraphina. I thought you were Akmal. He never leaves me alone." "It's all right, Maudie. I'll find someone somewhere else to." "No, wait, Seraphina, please." He opened his hand, showing her the object he tried to hide. It was a tiny octopus, about 3 inches long, intricately carved from a piece of bone. "It just looks like Silvestri," she exclaimed, delighted. That was the idea, he said. "It's beautiful, Maudie." "Thank you," he said, smiling shyly. "No one knows I carve. I managed to keep it a secret. I don't even know why I do it." He looked away. "It's just sometimes you want one thing, just one thing that's for yourself alone," she finished. It was as if they were seeing each other for the first time. "I have that with Cleo," she said. "Cleo?" "My hippocamp. I'm not allowed to ride by myself, being Principessa and all. If I want to go out, I have to go with guards, but I always manage to get ahead of them. And for a few moments, it's just Cleo and me. All I hear is the sound of her fans beating the water. If a pot of dolphins swims by, I see it alone. If a whale passes by, I hear her song alone." She smiled ruefully. "Of course, if I fall off Cleo and break my neck, I do that alone, too." When she finished speaking, Maudie took her hand and placed a little octopus in her palm. "For you," he said. A few nights later, she felt him take her hand again, this time in the dark, during a water lights display in his honor. He looked at her, asking her with his dark eyes if it was all right. She answered him with hers that it was. And then one evening, sorry about that, when they were playing hide and seek with Desiderio, Neela, Yazid, and the younger members of the court and the Regia, he'd suddenly pulled her deep into the tumbled ruins. "I cannot read today. I am so sorry for all the mess ups." "I found you," he said as they floated close together in the water. "No, Maudie, that's not how the game works. Don't you have hide and seek, Matali? It's not your turn. Desiderio's it," she said, keeping an eye out for her brother. "I'm not talking about the game," he said. "I found you, Seraphina. You're the one thing for myself alone." He pulled her to him and then kissed her. It was so lovely, that kiss, slow and sweet. Seraphina sighed as she relived it, then turned bright red when she remembered. Talassa was watching the blood song too. There were more kisses in the days that followed. Stolen behind pillars or in the stables, there were long talks when they could break away, smiles and glances when they couldn't. And then, as Maudie was leaving Miramar to return home, he'd given Seraphina a ring. It wasn't gold or some priceless crown jewel taken from the Metallan vaults. It was a simple band with a heart in the middle, carved from a white shell. He'd made it for her, alone in his room at night. As he was saying his official goodbyes in front of the court, he'd bent to kiss her hand. While he was holding it, he slipped the ring onto her finger. "My choice," he whispered to her. "Mine, not theirs. I only hope that I'm yours, Seraphina." As the blood tongue spiraled into the water and faded away, and went with it, the past. Talassa looked at Seraphina. "And do you wonder if he loves you, you silly Merle?" she asked. "I never used to, Magistra." Seraphina said she told Talassa about the private conches Maudie had sent her and how they'd suddenly stopped. "I've only had a few official communications over the last year. Nothing else. And now—" Her voice trailed off. Talassa cocked her head. "And now?" she prompted. And now he sounds like a very different merboy from the one I fell in love with. A riptide merboy with long hair and an earring, according to Tavia, and a mole friend, according to Lucia, Seraphina said unhappily. Lucia would say anything to upset you, you know that. She would love nothing more than to see you fail today, so you must triumph instead. Come, let's work on that trail again. And on the... They were interrupted by the sound of a door banging open. Seraphina! A voice squealed. Seraphina spun around, startled. A mermaid floated in the doorway to the antechamber. She was wearing a yellow sari. Her glossy jet black hair hung down to her tail fin. Her skin was glowing a pretty pale blue. She was flanked by servants who were buckling under the weight of the gilded boxes, beribboned clamshells, and gossamer sacks they were carrying. Great Neria, who on earth? Thalassa started to say, but Seraphina recognized the mermaid instantly. Neela! She shouted, forgetting all her worries and in the joy of seeing her best friend. Sponge Cake, there you are, Neela said. I brought you so many presents. The two mermaids swam to each other and embraced, whirling around and around in the water, laughing. Neela was bright blue now. She was bioluminescent, like a lanternfish or a bobtail squid. A bewitching light emanated from her skin when her emotions ran high or when other bioluminescents were near. Princess Neela, you're not supposed to be here, Thalassa scolded. We're right in the middle of song spell practice. How did you get in? Tavia, Neela said, grinning. Thalassa frowned. How many bags of bing bangs did it take to bribe her this time? 2, Neela replied, plus a box of ZZs. She released Seraphina, plucked a pretty pink box from a teetering pile, and swam to Thalassa. I'm so sorry to interrupt, Magistra. Really? May I offer you a ZZ? She asked, opening the box. You may not, Thalassa said sternly. I know what you're up to. You can't bribe me with sweets. A chili Wanda, then? How about a conge woohoo? You can't say no to a conge woohoo. And these are the very best. They take the palace chefs 3 full days to make. They have 8 layers and 5 different enchantments. Neela said, popping one of the sweets into her mouth. Krill with a caramelgy filling. So good. See? What I see is that our minds are elsewhere at the moment. Thalassa sniffed, taking a sweet from the box. You cannot stay long, you know, Princess Neela. Only a minute or 2. We really do have to practice. Of course, Magistra. Only a minute or 2, Neela said. Thalassa, mollified, sampled the sweet. Oh my, is that curried kale? Neela nodded. She handed her another. Beach plum with comb jellies and salted crab eggs. It's invincible. Thalassa bit into it. Oh, that is good, she said. I suppose perhaps half an hour's break might be in order, she said, her fingers hovering over the box. Neela gave it to her. As Thalassa called to her cuttlefish servants to bring her a pot of tea, Neela grabbed Seraphina's hand, pulling her out of the antechamber and into a wide hallway with windows on both sides, all of which were open to let in fresh water. Tail slap, Merle, she whispered, closing the door behind them. My evil plan succeeded. I thought you could use a break from practice. You thought right, Seraphina said, grinning. Uh-oh, Aqua Fago at 12 o'clock, Neela said. It was no Aqua Fago, but a palace guard swimming toward them. Your Grace, is there something wrong? You shouldn't be in the hallways unescorted, the guard said. Seraphina groaned. Privacy, solitude, time alone with a friend. She dearly craved these things, but they were nearly impossible to find at the palace. Great whites at 9, Neela whispered, nodding at the group of maids advancing with mops and buckets. Good morning, your graces. Good morning, the maid said, curtsying. A giant squid at 6. That was Tavia. Seraphina? Princess Neela? Why are you floating around in the hallway like common groupers? She bustled toward them, glowering. We're surrounded, Captain. I'm afraid there's only one way out of here, Neela said under her breath. Seraphina giggled. You cannot be serious. We haven't done that since we were 8 years old, and even then we got into trouble for it. I call Jacot Delahaye, Neela said. You always call Jacquot, Seraphina protested. She's the best pirate. Don't be such a baby. You can be Sayyida Al-Hura. Neela swam to a window on the north side of the hallway. She narrowed her eyes at Seraphina and said, Abandoned ship, chum bucket. Last one to the ruins is a landlubber. These were the exact words she said to Seraphina when they were little, pretending to be pirate queens and challenging each other to a race. Seraphina swam to a window on the south side. Eat my wake, bilge rat. 1, 2, 3. The mermaids shouted together. A split second later, Seraphina and Neela dove out of the palace windows and were gone. And that, ladies and gentlemen, ends chapter 6, and I'm getting ready to start chapter 7, which starts on page 58. See how long it is. And here we go. Determined to win the race, Neela swooped around a spire, then dove. Hurtling down through the water, she shot under an archway, startling the Matali dignitaries coming the opposite way, and made for the ruins of Maros Regia. She was swimming way too fast, but she didn't care. It felt wonderful to slice through the water, to feel powerful and free. Seraphina had zipped around a turret and under a bridge and was now gaining on her. Neela put on a burst of speed, but Seraphina caught up. They touched the front wall of the old palace, and as much of it as was still standing. At the same time, then collapsed on a pile of red coral weed. Laughing and out of breath. Beat you, Neela shouted. You did not. It was a tie, Seraphina said. Yeah, except that I won. I can't believe we dove out of windows. We're in so much trouble. Neela knew as well as Seraphina did that swimming out of windows was bad form. Civilized men came and went through doors. Aunt Ahadi would not be pleased. Now, if you remember, Aunt Ahadi is Madi's mom, and she's the Empress of Matali. So you can imagine how she would take things if she were to find out. And here we go. Oh, sorry. And here we go. Yeah, we probably are, but it was worth it, she said, pulling 2 sweets from her pocket. Here, purple sponge with pickled urchin. So good. You have no idea. Better than boys. That good, Seraphina said, taking a sweet. Mm-hmm, Neela said, biting into hers. She was eating too many sweets. She did that when she was nervous, like now. Sarah was going to ask about him. That was a given. What on earth would she tell her? Neela stretched out on the soft coral weed and stared up at the sun-dappled waters. It's so good to finally be here, she said. The trip was totally nerve-wracking. The dragons we rode spooked at every guppy. The sea elephants carrying our trunks bolted twice. I couldn't sleep because I was having bad dreams the whole time. Really? What kind of dreams? Sarah said. Seraphina asked, sorry. I can't even remember now, Neela said. She did remember, but she didn't want to talk about them. They were silly, and Uncle Bilal was seriously freaking out about Predatory. He expected Cockarias, their leader, to jump out at every turn, even though he doesn't know what Cockarias looks like, since no one's ever seen him. You weren't attacked, were you? Seraphina asked. No, we were fine. We had lots of guards with us. But I was so glad to see the Spire Cerealia last night, I can't even tell you. I'm happy you're here, Neela, Seraphina said. I can't imagine going through the Dokimi without you. Sarah hadn't asked about him yet. Good. Maybe she could keep it that way. How's the song spell? Are you nervous? What are you wearing? Neela asked. Not great, very. I don't know, Seraphina said. Neela sat up, startling some curious needlefish who'd come close. You don't know what you're wearing? How can you not know? Hasn't the Dokimi been planned for years? My dress is a gift from Miramara. The best craftsmen in the realm work on it, only when my mother sees it in advance. And anyway, it's not about the dress, Seraphina said. It's always about the dress. I'm casting a song spell, not competing in a beauty contest. This is serious, you know. My friend, nothing is more serious than beauty contest. Life is beauty contest. At least that's what my mother always says, Neela said. I can't wait for you to see what I'm wearing. It's totally invincible. It's a dark pink sari. The wrap is sea silk, but the top and skirt are made of thousands of tiny anemone shells stitched onto the tulle. I wanted it to be royal blue, but my aunt insisted on pink. I made it myself. You did not. I did, I swear it. But shh, don't tell anyone. You know how it is in Matali. God forbid a royal should actually work at anything, Neela said unhappily. Trouble with your parents? Seraphina asked, her eyes full of concern. That's an understatement. We fought about it for weeks. Major drama. I bet I ate 20 boxes of ZZs in one day. Neela's dream was to become a designer, but her parents wouldn't allow that or anything else. She was a Matalan princess, and Matalan princesses were to dress well, look decorative, and one day marry, and that was all. Neela wanted so much more, though. Color made her heart beat faster. Fabric came alive in her hands. She had passion and talent, and she wanted to use them. Seraphina took her hand. I'm sorry, Niels. Oh, well, I can't ever be a designer, but I can pretend. You are a designer, Seraphina said suddenly fierce. Designers design, that's what you did, and it doesn't matter who likes it and who doesn't. Neela smiled. Sarah was as loyal as a lionfish, quick to defend though she left. That's one of the many reasons Neela adored her. I just hope Alicia doesn't like pink. I don't want her thinking I look like a large and tasty ZZ. Is it true she's 10 feet tall? Yes. Okay. Like, why? Quia Mero de Crevet. Why the long torture song spell? Quia Mero de Crevet. Why a betrothal at 16? That's totally dark ages. Wait, don't tell me. Let me guess. Quia Mero de Crevet. But Mero decreed it like 40 centuries ago, Sarah. The tides have come in and gone out a few times since then, you know. I do. Believe me, Neela. I've listened to so many conscious on Atlantis and Meryl for various courses, and I still haven't figured out why she made all her weird decrees. The whole Dokimi thing is barbaric and backward. It's from a time when life expectancy was short and principesses had to be ready to rule at a young age, Seraphina said. The weirdest thing is, the ceremony declares me an adult, fit to rule, and yet I have no more idea about how to rule Miramara than I have about flying to the moon. I can't even rule my own court, she sighed heavily. What? What's wrong? Neela asked, her eyes searching Sarah's. My court, Seraphine said, making her face. There's this other Merle. Her name's Lucia. I remember her, Neela said. The last time I was here, my skin had just started to glow. She told me I looked like a fog light, and in the nicest possible way, of course. That sounds like Lucia, Seraphina said. Neela, she said, some things about Mahdi. Oh no, Neela thought, time to change the subject. Hey, you know what? Let's swim. Why don't we head into the ruins, stretch our tails? We can talk as we go. Neela pulled Sarah up from the coral weed, and they set off, swimming through what had once been a doorway. Time had crumbled its ancient arch. The walls of the old palace had tumbled down, and the roof along with them. Anemones, corals, and wrack had colonized the mosaic floors in what had once been Miro's grand hall. Soaring blue quartz pillars still stood, hinting at lost glories. You should see the ruby necklace I'm wearing tonight. It's my mother's. It's completely invincible, Neela said as they swam together. She was babbling, desperate to keep the conversation from veering back to Mahdi. How are your parents? Seraphina asked. Great, fabulous. They send their best and wish they could be here. But somebody has to hold down the fort in Uncle Bilal's absence. And how are the Emperor and Empress and your brother, Mahdi? Truly excellent, although I haven't seen them yet today. We got in around 8 last night. I was so tired I went straight to my room and fell into bed. Everyone else did the same. Neela, oh, did I tell you about the last state visit we all made? Ha, it's such a funny story, Neela said. She launched into all the details. Serafina wasn't really listening, though. So, how's Maudie? She finally broke in. Neela's heart sank. Her smile slipped. Serafina stopped swimming. What is it? She asked. Nothing. Neela said brightly. Maddie's fine. He's fine. My great Aunt Berta is fine. What are you not telling me? Neela pulled another sweet from her pocket. Oh, super yum. Candied flatworm with eelgrass honey. Try it, she said. Neela! Well, he's probably a little bit different from what you remember, she said. I mean, the last time you saw him was 2 years ago. We're all different than we were then. Look, I know you're his cousin, Serafina said, but you're also my friend. You have to tell me the truth. Neela sighed. All right, then. Here it is. His royal maudiness seems to be going through a phase. At least that's what Aunt Ahadi calls it. She blames it all on Yazid. Your brother, what does he have to do with this? Yas is a total party boy. Always the one with the lampfish on his head. My parents are at their wits' end, and Aunt Ahadi is furious. She says he's led Maudie astray. The two of them are out all the time. It started about a year ago. That's when they got their ears pierced. Aunt Ahadi went through the roof. She and my mother threatened to beat them for life. That doesn't sound like the Maudie I remember, Serafina said nervously, fiddling with some trim on her dress. Niels, I have to ask you something. Lucia said that. Neela unwrapped another sweet and bit into it. She made a face. Yuck. Fermented sea urchin. She fed it to a passing damselfish. She said that Maudie has a girlfriend. She said he... Serafina suddenly stopped speaking. Neela, busy wiping her fingers on a frond of calpera weed, looked up. That's when she saw the bodies of 2 young mermen. They were stretched out under a huge coral at the back of the courtyard, motionless. Serafina panicked. I can't tell if they're breathing or not. Neela, we have to get help. I think they're dead, she said, swimming closer. Neela panicked too, but for a totally different reason. No, they're not dead, she said under her breath, but if Aunt Ahadi hears about this, they're going to wish they were. And that ends chapters 6 and 7. Let me know what you guys think is going to happen in the next chapter. I've already read the whole series, so I know what happens. And let me know in your comments. Thank you. Have a good night. Have a good day, actually.